Oh, good morning again. As I was walking over and the breeze caught my notes and shifted them around, I was reminded of the time when we were not able to meet inside. We met outside, and so many of those mornings it rained. You remember that? And we had a little tent with all of our sound equipment underneath and wrapped, and we were trying to be so careful. And just as it was time for me to give the message, this breeze came through and took all of my notes and blew them into the water puddles around. And it forced me to do something that I've always been terrified to do, is give an accurate message from God without my cheat sheets. And it went well, as a matter of fact. It was a blessed morning for sure. And I remembered of times like that where the panic set in, and I was just afraid that the message that God was giving me was not the message that I was going to give out. So this morning I think it's a little bit more controlled environment, and so hopefully you'll leave this place with a better understanding of what was going on in the time of Jesus' life. And as I said earlier, finally I get to use the title Morsels into Meals. And it comes to us from the Gospel of John, the 6th chapter, the first 14 verses. And without going into great detail until we read that story, it is that feeding of the 5,000 where the crowds came and pressed Jesus because of all the things that they had seen and some of the things that they had heard. So let's go ahead and jump into the Gospel. It is the feeding of the 5,000. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. That's the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. And then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw the great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread to feed these people?" And he asked only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. And Philip answered, "It could take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish. How far will that go among so many?" And Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that space, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. And Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks. Let me say that again. Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they had enough to eat, he said to the disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left, and let nothing be wasted." And so they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. And after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." It is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
One of the interesting notes that will make as a sidebar here is that the feeding of the 5,000 is the only miracle that is included in every one of the 4 Gospels. The Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And one of the reasons for, I think, one of the reasons for its popularity is that this miracle communicates on so many different levels to so many different needs that each of us have. We see on one hand the compassionate good shepherd image of who Jesus was. But don't we also see the frailty of our humanness as the disciples fail to understand who Jesus is and the power and the presence that Jesus has in our lives. But it brings to us this question that happens so often in all of our families. What are you hungry for? You know, that question comes up at least once a day, maybe twice a day in my family. What are you hungry for? I don't know. What do you want? Well, you want to eat something here, you want to go out. Well, if we go out, where are we going to eat? So we get in the car and we start driving and say, I'll just drive up and down until we see something that looks good. So when we're in Chiefland, I've made 2 or 3 trips and nothing looks good because it's all the same. And we ask that question, so what is it that you want? What is it that you desire? What will satisfy your needs? So if we look at the statistics, much of the time, we as Americans will opt for something that is quick, easy, and cheap. Those things kind of satisfy our overall needs. We want it quick, we want it easy, we don't even care that it tastes good as long as it fills us up and doesn't empty our pocketbooks. And we do this in a world where we are so bombarded with health statistics, right? Watch out for the calories, look out for the trans fats. And when we're doing those kind of things, we don't even worry about what it will do to us in our body as long as that craving of that fast food will fill us up. And why not? Because they're everywhere. Fast food places just pop up all over the place. And gone are the days when the family can get in the car and have to search for something that they can find to eat, because there's something that you can drive up to that's right around the corner. It's next to Walmart, it's next to the gas station. You're never very far away from something that will offer a fast food answer to your craving. You can even find fast foods in the hospital cafeterias now. There's a book called Fast Food Nation, and it talks about the dark side of the all-American meal. And the author points out that we spend so much money on fast foods that we spend more there than we do on higher education, than we do on buying computers and their software, even more money on fast foods than we spend on cars, new cars, if you can imagine. In fact, if you were to add up the money we spend on movies and books and magazines and newspapers and recorded music and add them all together, we spend more than that on fast foods. So the question keeps coming up, well, what is it that you're hungry for? What is it that you're craving inside that will satisfy? That question is a great question to answer, and maybe we can find some answers to that as we understand what's going on in this miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. A little sidebar here, maybe it's a little pastoral confession. As I was pulling this message together, I was sitting down and thinking of the feeding of the 5,000, and I'm sitting there at my computer and typing away, and I realized that I have this big drink thing that keeps everything cold, and I filled it up with Gatorade, zero, and no sugar. And I have a dish right beside my computer of pork rinds. Pork rinds I like because they're crunchy, and they have 0 carbs. Was I hungry? No. I just had this craving that I want something to eat and drink while I'm working on the message of, maybe it was spurred by the title, The Feeding of the 5,000. I don't know, but here I am typing, eating, and drinking, even though I wasn't hungry, still trying to satisfy this craving. So the question is, if you allow it, it kind of tugs at a much deeper drive and desire that's down inside of us, and sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with food at all. We're looking for this sense of fulfillment in our lives. And the question comes up then, what activity do you devour, holding on for the day that will make yourself feel whole? What ideology are you buying in bulk, praying that it will answer the questions to the mysteries of life? And the list goes on and on and on for the cravings that we have inside that we try to satisfy in so many different ways. And it's an important question because there's a big difference that between the foods that we eat, whether we're hungry or not, and the food that God promises that will never leave us hungry. In case you haven't noticed, we're living in a world where cravings include things that are new to feast on, and there's certainly something that is more filling than the ordinary fare that we can find as we drive up and down the streets of our town. Because some of the people around, if you look out and see and notice that many of the people are licking their chops for an economic uprise, something that will boost their 401k. Some are even praying for another stimulus check that will help them get through just another moment. And others are looking for technology, something that will make their life easier, better, or more entertaining. And then I thought, how much better America's Got Talent is on a big screen with high-definition television. And I take another sip of my Gatorade and eat another crunchy bite of pork rinds. You see, Jesus was always understanding with hungry people. In the Gospel of John, he paints a picture of a Jesus who, at this height of his earthly ministry, he's reached kind of this rock star status. The people have seen what he's done, and they've started following him and clamoring for him to do more. And they're amazed in masses of the messages that his sermons give, as well as the results of his miracles. The buzz was, this guy's the real deal. This guy has the golden touch. So much so that they were even talking about that very day, that very moment, right after the feeding of the 5,000, they wanted to take a crown and put it on his head and make him king, earthly king, of their opportunity to free themselves from the Roman government. And so this was no small group of people either. We talked about the masses that were coming. And it's like an arena filled with people where they found this opening on the mount and the grassy spots. And it was as far as the eye can see. It reminds me of Times Square on New Year's Eve. Just people as far as the eye can see. And they were hungry for whatever that rock star rabbi would do next. And he always had something special and always had something surprising. But sensing both this logistical nightmare and the opportunity to send an unmistakable message, Jesus engaged what would be the most magnificent miracle to that moment. Because he took those 5 little loaves and those 2 little dried fish, and he broke them up into pieces, he blessed them and shared them. Now, here's something interesting to me. In the Gospel of John, Jesus took the fish, blessed them, and passed them out to the people. Matthew, Mark, and Luke say that Jesus gave the bread and fish to the disciples. And it wasn't until after the meal that Jesus, in the book of John, employed the disciples to go pick up the leftover pieces. But he took this snack packed lunch of this little boy and he fed the multitudes. And it was a surprise to everybody who was there except for Jesus himself. That simple, insignificant little meal more than satisfied the hunger of thousands upon thousands of Jesus' biggest fans. They were filled to the brim, and there were 12 baskets left over. As we study this story, it's tempting to use it as an excuse to paint a very attractive but dangerous, inaccurate picture of Jesus. You see, we have this temptation to see Jesus, the one who fed the multitude, the one who walked on the water, the one who healed the sick, the one who raised the dead and calmed the seas, the same way that the crowd did. There's a temptation to see a Savior who's here simply to meet our needs and make those temporary troubles melt away, to go away. Because that's the way the crowd envisioned who Jesus was. A kind of a short order Savior who would take the earthly cravings and satisfy those on a moment by moment basis. In fact, Jesus tells us the people were so moved they wanted to make him a king. We said that. They were so excited that they wanted to put him in charge of their lives, but not in a spiritual way, more in a different way. But if we're honest about all things, sometimes we have those same feelings ourselves. Sometimes we have that same attitude about Jesus. We have cravings for financial security. We have cravings that our families will come together and be together and there won't be any struggles. We're looking for peaceful relationships in all that we do and see. And sometimes we even go out to television celebrities like Dr. Phil and Oprah and the new ones on TV just to find some satisfaction. We look at the magazine covers as we're checking out of the grocery store and we see all of the cures to the ailments and the illnesses that we have and how to be financial wizards, and we just crave this. We have this hunger for this fulfillment that we don't find in the world by ourselves. And even the way we shop is a striking metaphor to our search for satisfaction. When I'm saying that, I'm thinking of of our warehouse club, the Sam's Club, and places like that. And we buy in bulk, thinking that we're going to save money, and we buy so many more things than we really need. And they offer everything from televisions to coat hangers and food to pots and pans. And did you know that one of the big box stores even offers buy your own coffee? What's with that? You buy that hoping you'll never have to use it. And then what do you do with it once you buy it? And then it occurred to me, if it's a big box store, you probably have to buy 6 of them because they come in a package together. And then what do you do with the 6 of them? One for all of your family and your neighbors too. The point of all of this, of course, aside from the jest of things like that, real thing, but aside from that, is that Jesus came to be what we need. He didn't come to just answer all of the pertinent questions and the desires that we have of the moment. He's not there to simply crank out whatever will satisfy those earthly needs. So if you're looking for a Jesus that will fatten your 401k, if you're looking for a Jesus that will heal your cancer on the spot, if you're looking for a Jesus that will give you 10 easy steps to raise the perfect family, that's the wrong Jesus. The scriptures offer plenty of guidance on those kinds of things, but Jesus himself has a different way and a different thing to tend to. He didn't come to perfect your life. He came to lay down his. His death, his resurrection, are those morsels that become the meal that sustains our souls, bringing wholeness, healing, and growth. And when we come to and for Jesus in the right frame of mind, then we receive Jesus. when our souls are fed and filled by the work of Jesus. We may still go through times of hunger. We may still go through times of unemployment. We may still find times when we don't have what we'd like to have. And that's kind of an earthly emptiness that Jesus is not worried so much about, because he offers to us eternal fulfillment. So we have to free ourselves from these issues that affect the day-to-day lives. And we look at the world then with contented eyes that offer us an eternal perspective. And so follow Jesus not so he can meet our needs right now, but rather know that he is all that you need for all times. And the children say,
Amen.
Amen.